I'm going to just tell all of you that Patty's daughter was in the first class of student leadership, Johns Creek. She also helped set up
She was.
the city. She set up Johns Creek. She lives in Johns Creek. So I have enormous respect for Patty. So, and she's been very helpful in helping us pick classes.
You're very nice.
Come up with curriculum. I think she actually helped write our mission statement. So, so I am so appreciative that she's here. So I'm going to go off because they are tired of listening to me, and I'm going to leave you with these two young ladies.
Great. All right. Oops. I know. Is Allison on yet?
I don't see her on yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, whenever you're ready, I don't want to get into too many details on the federal stuff before Allison gets here. If you know y'all need to take a break for 5 minutes, that's okay with me. So I think we were scheduled for 3:05. Or if you've got any questions about, I think you guys know a lot about Johns Creek just through this program and living there. If you've got any questions about the startup of Johns Creek, or I'm now in Brookhaven, which is also another new city in Georgia. I don't know if you do, but if you do, if you want to start with that, or if you would like to just wait a couple minutes until Allison gets on, but that is entirely up to y'all. This is your show. You let me know what to do, okay?
Okay, so well, you mentioned that first, would you like to give a brief introduction? I mean, we're going to introduce you in a second, so we don't want to spoil too much, but just so that we know who's speaking.
I think, actually, Irene gave you most of my stuff. We moved to Johns Creek actually in 1997. It was unincorporated North Fulton at that time. We thought we were coming for a year or two with a transfer, and thought then we would go back to the Northeast, which is where our families are from. But decided we really liked our candidate, really wonderful. And let me see, before I was in government, I worked in New York and in Boston. I worked in publishing for Time Warner, which is very project oriented. I was a managing editor there. I came here and took a few years off, and then was working for the Appin newspapers, the Johns Creek Herald, Forsyth Herald, those guys. I was an education reporter where I learned a lot about government. You've already had Linda McCain on, I think, today. So you know about how schools are a separate government in the state of Georgia. And got involved with local government over a park, OC Park. I found out that there was some question about whether or not that would end up in Johns Creek or Alpharetta. And I called at the time Commissioner Lynn Riley, and she connected me with your current mayor, Mike Bodker, and I ended up on that committee to form Johns Creek. I was the first, there's Allison.
Hi, I'm so sorry I'm late.
That's great. Well, I'm just about done. I was the first employee sworn in on Johns Creek, which was really exciting. That the day it was incorporated. The second employee is still there. She is the city clerk, who I think you guys may have had some interaction with, Joni Jones. She is still there. She's been there since day one. I have since come to Brookhaven, which is just inside the perimeter on the border of Atlanta and right sort of Atlanta, Fulton County, Dunwoody. It's real fun and exciting. So now Allison is here. So why don't you guys get started? I said, let's do the local stuff while we wait. I said you guys can take a break and they didn't. So,
okay, perfect.
You go ahead.
So my name is Elizabeth Douglas. I'm a junior at Johns Creek High School, and I'm part of the Student Leadership Johns Creek class of 2021. And I'm also one of the student ambassadors this year.
Great.
My name is Janice. My name is Janice Nam. I'm a current senior at Northview High School, and like Elizabeth, I am in the class of 2021 for SLJC, and I'm also a member of the Secretary of State Ambassador. So sorry, Ms. Hansen, since you already introduced yourself, I'm going to go ahead and read a short blurb about Ms. Blankenship. Allison Blankenship is a legislative assistant for Congresswoman Lucy McBath. She handles Congresswoman's education and nutrition portfolio of the House of Education and Labor Committee. In addition to these issues, she also covers energy and environment, women's and children. Allison has in the Congresswoman's office for nearly 2 years, and before that, she served in Representative Pramila Jayapal's office as a staff assistant and legislative correspondent, handling the daily operations and administrative duties of the office. So Ms. Blankenship, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, hi. Thank you guys for having me on today. I'm really excited to get started, and I look forward to your questions today.
Okay, perfect. So we'll get started. Since you're both on, I think we'll be asking you the same questions, but we can just go back and forth. So the first question is directed to you, Ms. Hansen. Could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became interested in pursuing a job in the government?
Sure. One thing I find to be interesting about government is it's not necessarily always a major undergraduate. People come into it from all different backgrounds. People come in, I think Allison will talk about her background. My undergraduate degree is in business. My graduate degree is actually in English and American literature and language, which is a long one, but it's essentially it's research and a research degree. So I had been in publishing in New York, and as I came here, was working as an education reporter, but really I love business. I'm more project oriented, although I enjoyed being a reporter because I learned so much through it. And I got involved really as an activist, which is a very unusual way to come into city staff. People who get involved as activists very often will end up running for office. And I met a lot of the wonderful people that you've spoken to with that. After the city of Johns Creek was formed, I assumed I would go back to my life and was offered a position with the city. That was a political appointment, but at the same time, one of the most exciting things with working with a startup is everybody starts from scratch. And so since we were rebuilding, really building things, I learned about how each department was set up and how it worked. And one of the things I really wanted to do was work in grants. So one of the things I was able to do, because we didn't have a department, was about half my time was spent setting up the grants program in Johns Creek. That loved doing, because it's really a lot of community work, which is, I think, probably project work and community work, two of the most interesting things to me. And since then, that was in 2006. I now am a director of strategic partnerships. So I work with multiple cities, multiple levels of government, and community improvement districts on several different levels. And I was going to give you one example of a project that might sort of illustrate that whenever you're ready. But how I got here was I got really interested in a park. I wanted to make sure it ended up in Johns Creek. And then I was just fortunate to work with some very talented people who taught me a lot. And I enjoy that work. I love now being able to work on transformative projects. I love urban renewal. It's a very exciting field for me.
Thank you for that, Ms. Hansen. So similar question for Ms. Blankenship. How did you get your job at the Hill, and how did you land your current role?
Yeah, it's kind of a winding path a little bit, but basically for the Hill, I was interning at a defense contractor before, and my roommate at the time was working in Congresswoman Jayapal's office, or one of her friends was, and her friend was just like, hey, we have an open position in our office. If you're interested, you should apply. And long story short, I ended up in Congresswoman Jayapal's office. And I mean, that's kind of how it usually works on the Hill too. It's like if you know somebody that is in the office or that can flag your resume for you. And that's similarly how I came to Representative McBath's office as well. So it was kind of just like, I guess, you know, people who knew about the open positions and let me know. But I knew once I think like my senior year is when I knew I wanted to work on the Hill specifically. I always known I wanted to get into public policy. And my senior year coincided with, you know, the run up to the 2016 election. So after graduating, I was, you know, I graduated on a Saturday, and 10 days later, I bought a car and was driving up to Pennsylvania to start work as an organizer on the Hillary Clinton campaign. And that's when, you know, I realized that there was so much work that I wanted to do in, like, once this campaign was over, I was like, well, what more can I do to do the most good, right? To help the most people. And, you know, I felt that what that meant was that, you know, I wanted to be on the Hill. And that was a way to still kind of stick true to the organizing that I had done. And also still, you know, be able to help the constituents of, you know, whichever district that I was going to serve. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much for telling us about your journey. So, Ms. Hansen, can you explain your current role right now and what you do, as well as the nonpartisan aspect of it?
Sure. I'll start real quickly. The nonpartisan aspect of it, I think this is very important because there are really two different ways of working in government. There is Allison works for an elected official directly. She's on staff and is on the staff of an elected official who is a Democrat. Sure, there may be, and she should speak to that, whether or not any partisanship comes into that. Commissioner Riley works in a Republican administration. I'm sorry, Commissioner Hazy. That's how I first got to know her. And also Commissioner Hausman ran as a Republican. Local government is nonpartisan. Brookhaven is, Johns Creek is, and I actually tried to do some research. I think local government across the state of Georgia is nonpartisan. I enjoy that. I promise you, it gets partisan on the elected level all the time because people know each other. But one wonderful thing about being in local government, and truly on every level of government, staff is nonpartisan. Our job is to work for the head of the government. In the case of the local government I work in, that is the city manager. He's the administrative head of the government who reports to the elected officials who report to the stakeholders, the voters and the taxpayers. Commercial businesses, for instance, who might not necessarily vote, but they are stakeholders because they financially support the city through different taxes and fees. I do not need to get involved in any of that. What I do is my job, and I'll show you real quickly what that is. If I can share my screen, so that actually I can share my screen. Okay. So the nonpartisan aspect allows me, do you guys see a screen that has a map on it right now? Okay, good. It allows me to work on projects like this. Nobody ever asks what my party affiliations are. And this is what is called the Peachtree Creek Greenway. If you look along this map, all these red dots, this is a greenway that's about 12.4 miles in this map. It's actually going to go a little bit further under 285. And in this, I work with multiple partners. It's going to connect Fulton County, Path 400, Buckhead up to North Fulton, the Gwinnett County trails to the east, the South Fork trails to the south, the Atlanta Belt line, which is right over here. This is the Fulton County line. And then we have MARTA bus and train. I work with everybody in this on a staff level. So I work with the staffs in all these different jurisdictions. None of us really worry about, are wonderful. We don't worry about vaults. We worry about our leadership, and we've all got great leadership. This tiny little piece of it here is what I'm concerned with. This 3 miles is Brookhaven. It goes along the Peachtree Creek, the North Fork of the Peachtree Creek. You might be familiar with that from Atlanta, the Battle of Atlanta. It's a big battle. And these are my partnerships. These are the people who just on my little 3 miles of it, I work with a number of partners in the city. We've got the engineering department. We have several vendors. We have a project manager. But what I'm in charge of is keeping all these balls in the air so that we can continue to get funding for it. So I'm not going to read all these through, but this is a slide that tells you how important all these agencies are. And one of the reasons I was really excited to be on here with Allison is to show you the connection between what your local government does and how we work with every level. One of my jobs as a local person is to make sure you are very well represented at these federal agencies and state agencies, so that important projects can get done. And for instance, on just this one, the federal agencies involved, and believe me, I got all of our elected officials involved in this. Federal Highway, they are paying for 2 phases of this, they're paying for 80% of it. We wrote a grant, we went through the Atlanta Regional Commission. Federal highway funds are very important for this. It is not a trail, it's a transportation project. It's going to get people back and forth from MARTA. It's allowed people to get out of their cars to get to places. The EPA is involved because it's on a creek. We need to clean that up. The Army Corps of Engineers has to be part of all our permitting processes because we're building very close to the stream buffer and also in floodplains. That U.S. Office of Housing and Urban Development, you might have heard of it, more familiar with HUD. So I work with staff on those levels, but my relationship with our federal elected officials and their staff is very important. I am often calling Representative McBath's office. I've called Senator Perdue's office. I worked very closely with Senator Isaacson's office and saying, there's this legislation out that I'm reading. I'm not clear on it. Can you get me a legislative read on this? I want to make sure, first of all, I'm not the engineer. I'm not saying what I'm doing is right. They're specialists, but I want to be able to make sure that how our city wants to use the funds is going to be the way that the funds are intended and appropriated. If not, I might have to go to another agency. Also, I care very much about how the legislation is passed. So along with a lot of other people, we will work closely with our federal representative staff, and they will often call us and say, what do you need? That's one of the best phone calls you get, and we get it all the time. You guys are so fortunate, you're so well represented. We will work with them to make sure that future funding, because I have to plan things out 5 or 6 years in advance, is going to be there. And we have no control over that. That is up to your federal elected representatives and your state representatives, and often, sometimes even your county representatives, depending on what project it is. So I hope that answers your question. I don't want to take up much time because Allison's job is very cool, and I don't want to get too far. Ooh, one more thing. I actually do have one more slide. This is my favorite thing about my job. This transformative impact. If you can see, those 2 pictures on the left are from the Peachtree Creek Greenway Watershed Improvement Project. It was a report that told, I'm sorry, the North Fork Peachtree Creek WIP. It told us the kind of shape that waterway is in, and it's very, very poor shape. We spent a lot of money on that, recognizing our responsibility if we're going to build next to a creek. We could damage it, but more importantly, we want to make sure we leave it. It's a beautiful asset for the community. And we had a lot of federal involvement. That's an important waterway. And we worked closely with elected officials and with those agencies. And if you look to your right, that's the type of thing I get to do in my job. I'm part of a team that makes things like that happen, which is just my favorite thing about it. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms.
Hansen. All the rest of your time with Allison.
Thank you, Ms. Hansen. It was really interesting to see how you have to collaborate with other levels of government, and it was really nice to see the projects that you've done. Yeah, that's really awesome. So now moving on to Ms. Blankenship, I really want to ask you about what some of the job responsibilities you have as a legislative assistant.
Yeah. So a few of my responsibilities, I mean, what I love about my job is that, or one of the things that I love is that no day looks like the last. But there's no such thing as a typical day on the Hill, at least pre-pandemic. Everybody's pretty much working from home now. But it could include one day I come in and I might have, back-to-back meetings with constituency groups or lobbyists, or it might entail going to a briefing on a particular topic or a piece of legislation that's coming through the House, or there might be a committee hearing or a bill markup, where I've had to prepare remarks and background materials for the Congresswoman to brief her on, what the hearing will be about, if there's any local ties to the specific issues, if any of the panelists are from Georgia, or how this particular issue, would impact our district specifically. And so staffing her at those hearings, bill markups, it just means that I'm there, and if anything comes up, if she has a question, I'm there to help her answer it. I liaise between her and the committee to get her questions answered or get their questions answered about anything that she might be speaking on. And those are for the days that we're in session, but also be like tracking votes. If there's anything in my issue area that's come to the floor that I might need to tell our legislative director about. And for those days that we're out of session, it's usually when I get to kind of catch up on the administrative parts of my job, whether, that's just kind of, reorganizing things or, helping to kind of plan what I'd like for the Congresswoman to kind of take on in my portfolio as we go down the road. And so it changes, but, those are pretty much the top level pieces that I have. I'm kind of a liaison between outside, organizations and, our office, but also responsible for staying up to date on current events within my issue areas to make sure that the Congresswoman is aware of everything that's happening.
Thank you so much. It's so interesting to hear how dynamic your days are. Ms. Hansen, I'd like to kind of ask the same question. What does your typical day look like? Is it like Mrs. Blankenship's where it's pretty different every day?
It's funny when she said, I had no idea what her answer was going to be, but it was so similar. One of the things I like best about my job is I certainly have a whiteboard in my office that has a list of things, short-term, long-term, dates of things need to be accomplished. But every day it is different because I have to balance that with what might come up on the spur of the moment. And if 2020 has been anything, it has been a year of things coming up on the spur of the moment. People's jobs rapidly changing because they needed to. And I think I have a particular point of pride in how local government, your local government, the local government I live in and the local government I work in, but also really throughout the metro area pivoted. And really it was an example of how government close to the people is wonderful. And I think at that point, and this is a good example, Representative McBath's office was at one point hearing from me about 3 times a day. I am one government that they have to deal with. But we worked really hard. We worked really long hours to make sure we dealt with emergent situations. And we were a tiny part, the health department, the county, the state. So that's a day. More typical today. It's funny, it's interesting. I felt like I sort of got back to a typical day a little bit more today. So I'll give you mine today. I had a call with the director of communications because they're about a potential story that might come out on one of my projects. We also discussed the New York Times Magazine cover story on Beaufort Highway. that ran this week. Buford Highway runs through Brookhaven, Chamblee, and Doraville, and it was very exciting. It was a wonderful article. Rebecca Cohen Morris of Doraville City Councilor and Doraville was heavily interviewed, and we had worked with her on a few projects. So that was great for all of us. We're excited to see it. Another thing, let me see what else today. I met with the Director of Public Works on several federal emergency management projects. Flooding, as you know, is a huge issue in Metro Atlanta. It is not the same issue here as it is in Johns Creek, because a lot of the Brookhaven area was developed before there were quite the same stringent rules on where you could develop and the impact it could have on waterways. So I'm sorry, I thought that was off. So that was the day too. We had to figure out when we would both be in the office. We also met on a restoration project on the North Fork of Peachtree Creek there's some EPA money in, and as a matter of fact, our federal elected officials might be hearing from me on that rather soon. It's important. So my day typically is going from project to project. Where am I on this? What do I need to follow up on? I got a note today from somebody that some federal funding streams had changed that were very important to us. They've changed about 2 years on a really important construction project. So that was something I had not planned on doing today. So I went through and researched that, and I will probably tomorrow spend a lot of time seeing if there's a method for us to get that funding back to where we want it. We can't always succeed in that, but sometimes things get shifted in the federal funding stream simply for administrative reasons, and they don't, the communication hasn't been great on where you are on a project. So I need to follow up on that. That's today. Tomorrow can be very different. You keep the long-term projects always on your mind, the short-term you deal with, and as Allison said, you pick things up as they go along. It's kind of fun. It's neat.
Thank you so much for your response. Ms. Blankenship, I have another question for you. What can students do in high school to prepare for a job in federal government if that's what they're interested in?
Yeah, for me, I mean, everybody's path to the Hill is very, very different. Similar to what Ms. Hansen said about, how people come into local government as well. Like, I've worked with people who have had MBAs. I've worked with people who have, undergraduate degrees in biology, and it varies widely. And so at the high school level, I'd say, I was always interested in kind of like current events nationally anyway. So just reading up on that. I was taking like AP government or econ classes to kind of get that foundation for maybe what I would learn in college. But, also reaching out or seeing if there's like organizations at your school that have involvement within the community. For me in high school, I was part of a club where we took trips around the city. I'm originally from Memphis. So we took trips around the city of Memphis to learn about different organizations and programs that were really improving the lives of Memphians every day. We visited like a local health center. We'd visit the theater, but learning about like the business side of it, like how they get their funding from the community, how, or the outreach programs that they're doing in the community as well. And same for the church health center. And, that organization brought in speakers that have really shaped the Memphis community as well. So just learning about different ways that you can get involved in your community and help was kind of what lighted my passion for wanting to do that, at different levels too, that, there's more ways besides maybe just government to help your community. And that organization in high school really proved that to me as well. And additionally, I did a summer program the summer before my senior year, and at St. Albans School of Public Service. It was a 4-week program and um, in DC, and we learned about government at all levels. We learned about local, state, and federal government. We had speakers come in that were involved in different levels of the government, officials, and to do case studies. And that was interesting for me because it was, not only did I get to learn about all these facets of government, I got to hear from the people that were involved in all of those instances. And then the case studies we did a mock Supreme Court case. And so it really got to expose me to how all of these facets of government work and all of the branches of the federal government work. And it gave me my kind of extended introduction to DC. I'd been there before to stay there for an extended period of time and meet other kids from around the country and even the world and learn from everybody that they brought in. It was one of the reasons why I ended up going to Georgetown because we toured Georgetown while I was there. And so it really kind of just opened my eyes to everything that is available to be involved in with government, whether you want to be involved in city government, state, federal. And that was one of the best things I think that really set me on the path to wanting to be involved in public service. And yeah, I'm still friends with people that I met there today, even though it's been almost 10 years since I did the program. And it was incredible. So that was one of the things for me that really opened my eyes. But even just, like I said, like the classes that you take are so important to, if there's not a government club at your school, maybe starting a government club or just public speaking, just those little things, can set you right for being able to, when you have to give presentations in class or speak up, because I have to, speak to people I don't know every day. And being comfortable doing that is one of the things that can really, help you along that path as well.
Thank you so much. It was so interesting to hear about how you got into government and as well as some advice you have. So kind of along the same route, Ms. Hansen, do you have any advice for high schoolers interested in this field, as well as important skills you think they should develop when they're young?
Allison, she really got it. She has been she's been interested in this for a long time. She followed a great path, but I think, as she pointed out, there are multiple paths. There are so many. One thing I will add to it is that whether it's a career in government or an interest in elected office, or doing, well, for instance, what Mrs. Sanders does. She has given thousands of hours volunteering for the city of Johns Creek. She is one of our finest assets. So and not to get off the idea of a career in government, I'm pleased that you asked that question, but Allison did such a great job. So I'm just going to put a plug in here. You guys clearly are already doing a lot of those things. You applied for a very competitive program. You're here. I know some of the projects that you're working on are really fascinating. I asked Irene if I could look at some. So you're doing a lot. I think everything she said. One additional thing I will say is that a career doesn't necessarily mean that you are somebody who is wildly interested in civics. We should all be wildly interested in civics. It impacts everything about your life and about your future, and you've got a voice in that. But government and leadership needs engineers, scientists, doctors. Every bit of society should be represented in your government, because every bit of society brings so much knowledge and experience. So I would say, as you go through, you're not all planning on going to government, but it would be great to see and to know that people going through whatever fields you're going to go into remain interested. Take that civics elective. It matters, and you can make a difference. And if you are not interested in government, go to some meetings, because you don't know what's going to happen down the street from you. So you've got a wonderful government right there. Right now, you can't probably not go into meetings, but you can tune in anytime. Go look at an agenda. I think one of the best things you can do is go at some time. I know how busy you are. Look at the agenda, and if you see something you're interested in, tune in for that and listen to the discussion, and you'll really see what's happening. As far as preparation, I think you guys are all great. If you're interested in government, you're going to get into it.
Thank you for your advice, Ms. Hansen and Ms. Blankenship. I hope that those of us that are listening really take it to heart and apply it throughout our high school careers. I think we need to realize that what we do now can be really impactful for our futures. On that note, I think we're going to move on. We have a short surprise from Lucy McBath. She was not able to join us today, but she made a short video for us to watch. And then after the video, we're going to open the floor for you guys who are watching to ask questions. I'm going to share the video right now. I think, give me a moment. You guys can see it. Tell me if you need it bigger.
That's good.
Can you guys hear it?
No.
Okay, let me, technical difficulties, we'll get through it. Okay, it should be good now.
Congresswoman Lucy McBath, and I'm honored to join you all for this Women in Government speaker series. I'm sorry that I can't be there with you virtually today, but I wanted to take the time to let you know how impressed I am by the work that you're all doing to stay engaged as students in your community. I'm so proud to represent each and every one of you, and I'm thankful for your commitment to our community. When I was in high school, I was inspired by the many strong female mentors and teachers I was able to learn from. And then when I got to college, I was only 1 in 4 women studying political science in my freshman class. I worked hard to get really good grades and to succeed. And it's a commitment that I still have as we work on legislation in the halls of Congress. I want to encourage each and every one of you to tell your story boldly. Never take no for an answer. You have to make a mark on this world, and you are truly meant to shine. You, the next generation of leaders, will shape the policies of our nation's future. Because of inspiring young people like you, I am so filled with hope. As we do this work, I want to remind you that the work that we do truly, really matters. The work we do for others really matters. The work we must do as public servants, especially as women serving in government, has never been more important. Women throughout history have made an indelible mark on the world, as mothers, as daughters, as leaders, and as activists. It's because of people, young people like you, that change is truly possible. It's because you all have the power to stand up and succeed at whatever you choose to do. I encourage all of you to find strength in your communities. Find strength as fellow students as to how we can take our powerful seat at the table to improve our world, to make our voices heard. I look forward to watching you grow into the strong, bold leaders of tomorrow. So as we go forward, let's fight for a future changed by the unstoppable force and power that women represent. God bless you all.
So that was Miss Lucy McBath for us. If there are further questions from those of you that are watching, please feel free to add it into the chat box or unmute yourself and ask away.
So one of, oh, you want to go? Okay. So one of the first questions I see, both of you, please feel free to answer, but what has been the most rewarding part of your job?
I can go first. For me, I think it's rewarding. I mean, seeing my boss get reelected, that was that was really exciting. Knowing that the work that we have put in for the past 2 years made an impact on our constituents, and they believe in us to do it again for another 2 years. But also, what I love is being able to meet with constituents every day, whether there might be somebody in in a Georgia organization that comes up to visit, and one of them lives in our district. I love, being able to meet people from the district every day and hearing a lot of them take the time to volunteer for an organization to come up and advocate for a certain issue. And that's inspiring to me, that people have taken time out of their daily lives, unpaid, to come and advocate for something that they're really passionate about. And that just reignites in me the reason why I do what I do, is that, there are, like, what we do really can make a difference in people's lives. And it's refreshing to be able to meet some of those people day in and day out. And, that's my favorite part about my job, besides getting to work with some of the best people on the Hill. I really enjoy meeting constituents, even when they just walk in just to say hi, or, a family. I love getting to chat with them and just getting to hear from them. So that's always really fun for me.
There. As far as a defining moment, I think undoubtedly as I said, I got involved because of a park, but really I got involved and became more involved because I'm sort of a data geek. And we started working on the inequities, financial inequities in Northeast Fulton County. We looked at things like, well, why does Alpharetta have those 6 beautiful parks? Why don't we? And we really started drilling down into the whys. And I was very, very proud to work with a group of people who did not want to take money away from great need. What they wanted was to increase safety in their community. Before the city of Johns Creek, there were 2 patrols in all of Northeast Fulton County, police patrols. There were, wonderful public safety workers who now work with the city of Johns Creek. There are now, I think, close to 83 police officers that serve you very well in Johns Creek. It was things like that got people going. And, the traffic, if you think the traffic is bad in Johns Creek now, there was just a lot of things that on a very basic level were not getting done. Commissioner Riley at the time was fighting valiantly, but she was one person with a big commission. And so that moment when that passed, when the citizens of Johns Creek voted for cityhood for all the right reasons, I think we laid out a very pointed case that was backed by numbers. When that passed was just probably one of the most incredible moments of my life, when I heard that heard that it passed. And Allison knows the excitement of working on a campaign is amazing. And even if it's a local campaign in your backyard or a federal campaign, knowing you made that difference it's a very exciting time. So I would say that. And then I went to the completely other side. I went to staffing. I wanted to make more changes. I got addicted.
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit about kind of high school, but I remember specifically the 2004 election between George W. Bush and John Kerry I was kind of like my political awakening. That's when, I was in 5th grade at the time, but we had a project in my social studies class that we could do a report on any current event at the time. And so I did the election, and, that was just like kind of a synopsis of both of the candidates, like their past. And a summary of their platforms and everything. And so like that really got me interested in, you know, beyond this project. I was like, oh my gosh, like there's so much to learn about elections and, you know, what do these platforms mean? Like, what are these issues? And that's when I knew, and, you know, my family grew up, there was always CNN or MSNBC on the TV. So, you know, I was always hearing these analysts and anchors talking. And so I was just always curious, like, you know, how can I be involved as well? And how can I, you know, learn more about this? And then I learned ways that I can be involved and also help to make a difference. So that all started in 5th grade, I guess. But working on the campaign was also really a defining moment for me. You know, meeting with volunteers and hearing the reasons why they wanted to volunteer for the Clinton campaign, and hearing their stories. It again reminded me why I joined the campaign, and, you know, further made me realize that I wanted to go into and why I wanted to go into government, to continue helping those same people that, you know, gave of their free time to, you know, work for a candidate that they believed would continue to fight for them. And so those were some of, I think, the best moments when I knew that's why I wanted to go into government.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and how you got into government. We are sadly out of time right now, but for anyone who had questions that weren't answered, please feel free to email Ms. Sanders. I'm sure she'll help you get in touch and get these questions answered. I want to say thank you again to both Ms. Hansen and Ms. Blankenship. Your answers and your advice were so enlightening to your roles in the government, as well as what we can be doing in the future. So again, thank you so much.
So before we go to our very last thing, I'm sure you both know that Georgia is in the national and international spotlight because of our 2 speaker roles that are up for election on January 5th. And we wanted to make the kids and all of you students aware that the election is January 5th. And if any of you or any of your family, your sisters or brothers turn 18 by January 5th, even if you didn't vote in the last election, you are eligible to vote in this election. So you can register. The last day to register is December 7th. You don't have to be 18 by December 7th. You have to be 18 by January 5th. So, so Mahar is going to come back and talk to us a little bit. Yes, Patty.
I have had this question. Wait a minute. I've had this question, and everything Irene said is very helpful. I'm so glad you mentioned it. Also, some people think if they did not vote in the general election, then they cannot vote, like even if they've been registered. I just want to completely dispel that misconception. Even if you didn't vote in this, you can vote in the runoff. And I know you guys are clearly in touch with a lot of people, so I just want to add that to what Irene said.
So Mahar created a little video to talk about this, and I wanted to thank Allison and Patty, and you guys are welcome to watch Mahar's presentation about voting and the importance, especially in Georgia in the next 2 months. So thank you again, ladies, for your help, and Janice and Elizabeth, you did a great job. So I am going to hide my video so that we can turn it over to Mahar.